everybody, it's Dana and I'm so glad to be here with you today. We're going to be making a card with the Magnolia Branches cover plate. This is absolutely a gorgeous, gorgeous cover plate. We're going to do some watercoloring with the Hero Arts Reactive ink in Key Lime Fizz, Taffy, and Lemon Drop. And for my paper, I'm going to be using the Hero Arts Luxe watercolor paper in the color of white. I love this paper. It really takes on inks and watercolors it beautifully. So today we're going to use this paper. I am going to set my panel onto the side because this paper is big enough that I can get two of these panels out of it if I need it to. So I'm just going to go ahead and tape this down to the top part of this, and I can save that other piece for another project later. I'll just use some clear tape here, and that's just going to hold that in place until I can run it through my die cutting machine. Now you can also use other watercolor paper as well with this die, but this paper works beautifully with it. Now I did run this through my die cutting machine very slowly because there are little bits to this. I wanted to make sure I ran it through slowly so I got a good cut, and any pieces left over I could use my pokey tool, and look how gorgeous this is. Now I'm going to color each of these sections. So I want the flowers to have some color, so I'm going to bring in my little mat here, and this is just going to help me contain the watercoloring onto the mat. And I'm going to start with my inks. And instead of having to have a palette off to the side, I just grabbed the packaging. And I'm just going to put my ink right on that packaging. So I'll go ahead and put down just a tad bit of ink, just smushing it onto that plastic. I have two brushes here, and I also have a container of water. I keep water in this little bottle on my desk so I don't have to keep running back and forth to my sink. Now I have the two brushes because I'm going to use the smaller one to do the flowers with and the larger one to do the branches. So all I did was add a little bit of water to my brush, and I'm going to come in and paint these flowers. Now this is going to be a very loose watercoloring, so I'm not really trying to be precise. I just want to get down some of the yellow. Now the more water I use, the lighter my color is going to be. If I want a stronger color in one area over the other, I would choose to use less water. It's totally up to you, but again, this is very, very loose watercoloring. I don't want to overthink this because I am going to blend these colors together. So that's another great way to kind of stretch those reactive inks, is to cover up a panel just like I'm doing. And don't take this seriously. Like, have fun with this. Let the colors kind of mix and mingle till your heart's content. Once I get all of my yellow down, I want to kind of punch this up. I just don't want it to be like a flat color. So that's where we're going to have some of that definition coming in. I'm going to go ahead and clean off that piece of acetate, or actually it's just my packaging. And I'm going to bring in some of that taffy. Now, if I go directly to this paper with that color, it's going to be very, very strong. I'm going to get a great deep color blend. So you'll see it right here. You see how strong that color is? I'm going to give you a little tip. If you want to lighten up that color, grab a water bottle and spritz your paper. This is now going to allow that color to move a little bit easier. So you see, once I start putting down that pink, it's actually blending a little bit better. But if you want the more contrast when you're doing this, don't bother to wet your paper down. But you can see by having this lemon drop and that taffy together, I'm getting areas that are a little bit more of an orangey color. And again, it's loose watercoloring. So every single flower on this is not going to be exactly the same. And that's what I love about watercoloring, is you have the opportunity to kind of allow things to just blend on their own. Now, I like where I'm at here, so I'm going to go ahead and heat set this first layer back. Now, I know magnolias are white, but remember, we're crafters. We can change the color of everything we're working with. So don't just think that this has to be white or off-white. Change it to whatever color you want. Now, since I have my coloring for my flowers done, now I want to go ahead and start getting those branches done. Now, again, if you're looking at a magnolia tree, the branches are going to be more of a brown green, but this is my card. And as a crafter, we're allowed to do it any way we want. So I'm going to come in first with the Keyline Fizz. Again, this is a reactive ink. I'm able to watercolor with it, and I am going to switch over to my larger brush. Now, as I started painting with this, I said, this color is a little bit too light for me. So I went ahead and I grabbed my Hero Arch Shadow ink in the mid-tone, and this is Fresh Lawn. Now, this per se is not a ink that you can watercolor with, but in my experience, I am able to mix this with the reactive inks and a little bit of water and kind of change the shade. So don't be too afraid to experiment with the Hero Arts inks that might not be reactive inks. I find that I have great success with it, and I like that I'm able to blend my colors and get like deeper shades. Now, I could have used several layers of the Keyline Fizz to darken this up, but just by adding in that Fresh Lawn, that mid-tone, I'm going to have some variation now in that watercoloring. So again, as long as I'm using some water and I'm mixing it in with that reactive ink, I find this to be successful. Again, experiment with what you have in your craft room. You might be surprised at what products work well together. Now I went ahead and went all the way around this, coloring in all of my branches. And as you can see, it did not take me very long to do this. I think in total, it probably took me less than 30 minutes to get this card complete. Now I have that where I want it. I love that the way that looks. So I'm going to go ahead and heat set this back. Now this really looks like such a gorgeous spring card, and that's exactly what I'm going for. Once I have this dried back, I do want to kind of deepen up some of those areas. I want a little bit more contrast in that green. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and grab that Fresh Lawn ink pad one more time. I'm going to add a little bit more to that plastic. And then I'll just use some water and just give these branches a little bit more depth. For some reason, to me, they were just kind of like blended out, and I needed a little bit of a more stark green. So I went in certain areas and deepened up this color just so I can have a nice color blend like I had with the flowers. Again, experiment with your inks and see what works well for you. Now, since I have this done, I like the variation a little bit more. So now I can go ahead and set that aside. And I do want to make sure to heat set this, because this is all of the watercoloring we're going to do today. Again, it's very loose watercoloring. I don't want each one of these flowers to look the same, and I want some variation as well in my branches. Well, look, that just makes me think of spring. I love it so much. Now I am going to add 2 more layers to the back of this to give this some height. So I went ahead and die cut out that Magnolia branches cover plate 2 more times in white cardstock. And this is going to allow me to get some depth in this panel. I really like doing this and layering this up because you kind of get the white shadow part behind the color palette that you just did, or the top cover plate, and it really does make everything kind of stand out. So here I'm just going to start adding in some of my Hero Arts Precision Glue and get this ready for the top panel to lay on top. Once I get all that glue in place, and I do go kind of heavy-handed with this because my paper, my first cut is kind of thin, and I want to make sure that I get really good adhesive with this. So I can go ahead and line that up. And again, when you're using the glue, you have opportunity to kind of move everything around. But if you wanted to do like a lazy way, you can also use like double-sided adhesive sheets. I find I work better if I'm just using a wet medium to get everything together. Now, since we have this panel done, I think it looks absolutely gorgeous, but I did want to add something else to this. Just putting this right on my paper is not, or my card front, it's just not going to make it pop. Now it was time to add some color behind this. I decided to use the Hero Arts Coral Cardstock. I love the way this cardstock looks with this Magnolia branch cover plate on top. I think it's so stunning, and it really makes my flowers pop a little bit more than if I had just put it onto a white card base. Again, I'm using my precision glue for this. I can make sure that everything's going to be adhered perfectly to that coral piece of cardstock. And look how gorgeous that is. Now, again, if you wanted to really make this a little bit more striking, you can put black behind here, or you could put navy. But I really love the pop of this coral cardstock right behind that panel. Once I get everything lined up correctly, I do try to go back in and fix in the areas where I might need a little bit more glue, because this is like my opportunity to make sure that everything is stuck on to this coral background. But you can see how gorgeous this looks. Absolutely stunning. Once I make sure that everything is stuck to that coral cardstock, everything is lined up perfectly, I'm going to go in with a pair of scissors and trim down any of the coral paper that might be sitting on the outskirts of that cover panel. So all I have to do rather, is just go ahead and take those scissors and trim down any excess of that cardstock. But look how beautiful this looks. This is such a happy, happy spring card. And I love the fact that we have those two shades of green, and then we also have those flowers that have that combination of that taffy and that lemon drop. Now, to finish this off, I am going to put it on a Hero Arts side folding card. And I also went ahead and stamped out a sentiment from the Creative Quote stamp set that just was released. I thought that would go perfect with this card panel. Again, I'm using my Hero Arts Precision Glue to go ahead and place that down onto my card panel. So at this point, I'm going to just grab my tool and just really make sure that I press this panel onto that card base. And look how gorgeous that looks. I mean, that really awesome pop of coral really makes this work. Now for the sentiment, again, I had already pre-stamped this out. It was a sentiment that was already sitting on my desk. So I just went ahead and grabbed it to use for today's card. And I am going to pop this up on foam tape. I just want this to have a tad bit of dimension, because with these kind of cover panels, it's kind of hard of where you place a sentiment. So if you have a small little sentiment like this, you can go ahead and pop that off to the side of the card like I'm going to do today, or you can pop it up in the center, whatever works for you. I do think this panel would look gorgeous too as a shaker element as well. So keep that in mind. You can watercolor this and then turn this into a shaker card. Now I would go ahead and line that off to the side. And just for some added color, I did want to bring some color up onto that sentiment. So I always like to go for my Hero Hues Enamel Dots. They just add the perfect touch of color or a perfect accent to your card. So I'm just going to grab two of these and put them on the sentiment panel. Again, I just wanted to bring some of that green up onto this sentiment. And then once I have these two lined up, this card is going to be done. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you back here very soon. Have a great weekend, everybody, and stay safe.